And I finished up my career at DNR in the Ace Basin Research Reserve, which is just from Edisto Beach down to Harbor Island and up towards Walterboro. But before that, I was with the Coastal Bird Program. And so it sounds like Felicia Sanders was here a couple of weeks ago. I just saw her last week, and we caught up about this group and how exciting it was that I'd be dipping my toes back into the bird world. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys about birds, because the land trust work is very complicated and kind of over my head. But my job with OSI is as a Parks and Stewardship Coordinator. I take care of all of our lands. I do outreach work, and I do quite a bit of planning while we work on these properties and make them into open spaces. What we do specifically, as opposed to TNC or Ducks Unlimited or Low Country Land Trust or the Open Land Trust or Edisto Land Trust, is everything the Open Space Institute does is towards creating public spaces. So we don't do private land conservation easements in South Carolina or the Southeast. Everything that we acquire, we, as soon as we can, take out of OSI's possession and put into the possession of some kind of public entity. So we work quite a bit with DNR, with Forest Service, with state and federal forest services, state parks. So everything that we acquire, we turn into public spaces. And so my task as the parks manager is in that intervening time while we own a piece of property, usually it's for a year to 3 years. I come in and actually try and create park spaces. So we do kind of preliminary construction for roads and trails and boat launches and camping and kayak put-ins and things like that. And we also do quite a bit of planning services. So I work with those end entities, whether it's DNR, state parks, or Fish and Wildlife, to help them plan their public amenities at their public land that we help them acquire. But in South Carolina, we are very busy. We've only been active in South Carolina since about I think our first project was in 2014. And so this is an outdated map. It's from November 2023. But just shows you all the projects we have in South Carolina. And this does not include North Carolina, Georgia, or Tennessee. But on this map, we have about 100 projects now. We currently hold, before we can dispose to entity, on this map we currently have about 34 different properties. That sums up to about 21,000 acres of land that we currently hold that we try and get again to those public agencies. In the queue right now we have another 22 lands that adds up to about 13,000 acres. And projects that we've acquired and disposed adds up to about 55,000 acres. So when you round up all the work that we've done and we're doing now, it adds up to about 100,000 acres of land protection and opening up to the public 100,000 acres in South Carolina. So pretty remarkable stuff. We've got a pretty aggressive team in South Carolina. There's 8 of us, and I am the only one that's not either a PhD or an attorney. So most of our team is focused on acquisition, disposition, and leadership. And so this is our muse, right? This is our foil for what we do in open space. And I know everyone is concerned about Charleston County and across South Carolina. Is this just unmitigated sprawl and development? We've seen a huge influx, as everyone knows, since COVID. So this is what we're trying to plan wisely in the state and beyond. And so with OSI, we have kind of 4 main driving missions to create recreation and prosperity for the communities that we work in. You'll see as we kind of go along, we work on really a landscape scale. So you'll see we have quite a bit of work over here at the top of the East Basin. You all have heard of the East Basin. So we are now focusing on marrying the East Basin with Port Royal Sound. And so we're having this big drive with our partners, Beaufort Land Trust and TNC and DNR, to actually protect the connection between those two watersheds. So this area with all these dots and all these different properties is actually, as far as I can find, the highest water connection between those two watersheds. So that's really an exciting opportunity there. We do quite a bit of work on the Santee River, which is right there, which is an expansion of the state forest as well as Francis Marion National Forest and Cape Romaine National Wildlife Refuge. And I'll touch on Ladies Island is up here, the largest unprotected barrier island in the state. Then I'll do a deep dive on the Black River right there, which is kind of my focus area right now as the Parks Project Manager. So we do focus on recreation and prosperity, which I'll do a great case study on in a few minutes with the Black River Project. And with that goes wildlife, water, and wilderness. Our motto is we protect places for people and nature. So obviously there's great opportunities for overlap there when you plan wisely. Protecting scenic values and cultural resources. And these will be kind of demonstrated as I go through a couple of small projects I'm going to show you. So first landscape I want to show you is all of our work in the marshes. And so maybe you guys have heard of Harrell Farms, which is on Wadmalaw. We just helped, or are currently helping the town of Meggett with their second park. If you've all been to Roxbury Park, which is a hugely successful park they have out there. This is kind of mirroring that project, Harrell Farm. It's overlooking Wadmalaw Sound right there. It's about 160 acres that they're going to turn into a Meggett Town Park. It is breathtaking. They have this entire mature pecan grove right here that looks absolutely picturesque. Beautiful grassland, kind of fallow field with wildflowers everywhere. And overlooks Wallover Sound. It's going to be available to the public, to the town, and to everyone else in Charleston County in perpetuity. And so with this project, it brings the town's protected land up to 500 acres, which is really a fantastic benchmark for helping the town get. I mean, that's obviously not very far from here, right in Charleston County. To zoom out a little bit on the map, it's the obviously the highlighted green area right there. So not very far from where we are today. I tried to burn it up a little bit for y'all with storks. And while I was out there, I would just mention, just to give you a little bird anecdote. So you guys know all about the DeVoe Bank, right? Felicia told you all about the whimbrels and red knots and piping plovers out there. There is a dock on the property right here. And we were out with our stakeholders and partners, giving them a tour of the property. It's May 30th now, it's probably May 5th. And so we're on this dock at 3:30 in the afternoon, wrapping up for the day. And all of these whimbrels start flying down, this is, I think it's Oyster House Creek right here. All these whimbrels start flying down the creek from the inland, flying right down the creek across Wallover Sound. And they're going right to DeVoe Bank. So as I sat there and everyone was in front of me, we're talking about budgets and funds and grants and things. You hear all these whimbrels kind of chirping and flying in groups of 15 and 20, zooming right past us, going out to DeVoe. They're up here in the swamps and the marsh, foraging for those fiddler crabs. At the end of the day, they all go to DeVoe Bank. So that was really exciting for me to see. It's just kind of marrying all this important work together. So the next kind of landscape we're working on are the barrier islands. And as a case study here, we have Ladies Island. And this is all the way up on the North Carolina-South Carolina border. It's about a 3.5-hour drive from Charleston. I know it well, all the way up Highway 17. And this is, as I said, the largest unprotected barrier island in South Carolina. Depending on how you want to slice it up and what you want to call the island and not the island, it's about 3,000 acres of Ladies Island proper, which is the barrier island, which is about 3 miles of beach, and then the big upland, what they call the neck, which is all that forested land up there. All in all, about 3,000 acres with 3,000 miles, or 3 miles, of barrier island. And what's so striking about this particular property, why it's such a conservation priority for OSI and TNC and PRT, or state parks, and DNR, is that right here you have Cherry Grove, and beyond that, Myrtle Beach and the Grand Strand. Wow. And so this is a remarkable place for recreation, for conservation, for education, and a hugely important place as a migratory stopover site. Because this is really, if you think about birds, they might do a hop, skip, and jump migration, whether they're kind of hopping down individual beaches or jumping from island to island or skipping across entire states. This is really the last stop before you get down to Cape Romaine in the Santee Delta, North Island, South Island. So this is a hugely important place for coastal birds. I was out there, I think just last week actually, maybe 2 weeks ago. And as I was coming down the beach, this is called they call it the Grand Dune, 30 feet high. The highest dune I know of in South Carolina that's still out there. And thankfully, according to the folks that own the property, it's actually still growing and moving. It looks tragic in that, but that's after a storm. So it's actually still, a fairly constant dune, which is just incredible to still have in the state. But as I was making my way down the beach to that dune, I counted casually, I think 7 piping plovers. It was still early May. We had a flock of like 75 red knots, totally unaccounted for. Obviously, it's a big sea turtle nesting area. So we were very excited to have that project underway. Of the 3,000 or so acres of the entire project, we have 1,000 acres already protected by our partners, whether that's TNC, the Coastal Education Foundation, or Coastal Carolina University. OSI, for our part, we've acquired 685 acres of the island, and with the final goal of having the property co-managed by Coastal Carolina University, SC State Parks, and DNR. And they're going to obviously, we're going to have a huge impetus to make sure that this barrier island is protected for all those coastal natural resources, the birds and turtles and so on. So that's going to be a fantastic destination for education and interpretation, with a big emphasis on those coastal species. Here's just again one of our property maps. So you can see, as every one of these landscape projects, it's all about piecing together all these puzzle pieces of acquisition and funding sources and willing sellers and whatnot. You can see it's on that inset map. It's way up on the North Carolina border. But a real priority in the state, all the way up to the governor's office. And ubiquitous red knot, sandpipers, maybe anything else? Quiz. Red knots and some peeps. And I think there's a dowitcher in there. Okay, so the next is really my bread and butter, which is the coastal rivers. Again, I said we have the Santee River corridor and also the Black River corridor, which is in Williamsburg and Georgetown counties. And so this is what we'll kind of use as an example of really the kind of work that OSI does. So this is a map of the Black River Paddle Trail and Park Network that OSI is currently working on building, which goes from the town of Kingstree up in Williamsburg County, 70 miles of relatively pristine Black River, all the way down to the town of Andrews and beyond into Georgetown County. And so what we're doing here is there's kind of 3 legs of this Black River Water Trail and Park Network, which is a mouthful. But there's kind of 3 legs of this project. One is land protection, habitat protection. This, if you remember from 2015, this was the heart of the major flooding we had in South Carolina. And if you remember seeing after that, what they call it, yes, there's a name for it. But you saw all these houses on the river with water up to their eaves. That was mostly the Black River. And so what we're doing now is trying to secure all of the Blackwater swamp we can along that corridor. So think of cypress, tupelo trees. This place is just incredibly thick with mature bottomland swamps, which are hugely important for habitats and also stormwater and floodwater management. So we started this project back in 2018. We published our master plan in 2021 with the goals, again, of land protection, habitat protection, economic development, with the two major centers being the town of Kingstree here and the town of Andrews here. And with that economic development, that is really the product of increased recreational access. And so what we're doing here is working with the county partners of Georgetown and Williamsburg counties, with their parks, with local parks, with nonprofit parks, and with state parks. And so this whole corridor is a combination of different park units that will all be managed as one kind of contiguous park network, regardless of who owns them. And so currently on this map, there's probably 13 different park units, state park, county park, nonprofit park, local parks. But at the end of the day, we'll probably have 15 or 16 park units along this 70-mile paddle trail, which is absolutely incredible. And so the goal as a park project manager is that someone could put a kayak in here at Kingstree, paddle for 9 nights, 10 nights, for 70 miles all the way down here to Rocky Point Community Forest, and have places to camp, places to use the restroom, places to access trails at least every 10 miles. So pretty remarkable. The anchor of this project is the new Black River State Park, and those are kind of the dark green dots here, and here, and here, and here, and these Worldby State Park, and there, which is kind of hard to tell from this map. It's the first state park that was announced in 25 years. Since then, we have secured for PRT with other partners. TNC is a big partner. I want to say 14,000 acres for the state park, which now makes it the largest state park in South Carolina by acreage, let alone the fact that it's spread across what is currently these 8 park units along the Black River. So that's going to be a remarkable opportunity for folks to get out there, experience the river. What's really remarkable when you think about public access, if you've ever been out to Williamsburg County, it's pretty rural. This is the flagship unit right here, which it's now being called the Meadows. I think with the Savannah is kind of the name we're settling on. But this is kind of the heart of the Black River State Park. We're not quite open yet. But this unit, with these 2 boat ramps that are being built right now, aside from those launches, there's a 40-mile stretch of river that is completely inaccessible to the public. There's a boat ramp in Kingstree right here, and a boat ramp in Urban Landing right there. But that is 40 miles of river that is currently completely off limits to the public, unless you own riverfront property. So that is really, really impactful when you think about, restoring people's access to the river, equitable justice, things like that. There's really going to be a huge opportunity to increase recreational and traditional access to the rivers out here. And so this is just kind of a photo of what that Black River looks like. Both sides of this river, this is RMS, we call it RMS South on this side, and this is RMS North, which is not really an important name to know. But we protected both sides of the river for 4 miles contiguously, which means you can put your kayak in on this property, paddle up to the beach here, paddle 2 miles down to the next boat launch, and never leave the property. So this side of the river, we protected about 1,200 acres with this 1 park unit, and this park unit, we protected 800 acres, which protects, again, 4 miles of river frontage on both sides. So pretty remarkable. And you can't tell from this river, but as the name suggests, it's a Blackwater River, so tanning colored but clear. Simply remarkable. And again, going back to creating access, getting people out there, kind of building it right the first time. we have a huge community input process. So we started this process back in 2016, and the first thing we did before we really brought any land or did any planning was do a big public outreach and public survey. So we got 1,500 surveys back about what people wanted to see on the Black River and the Black River State Park, with most of those responses coming from the local community, which is predominantly African American. And what we heard from that survey was people wanted restored access, they wanted litter control, they wanted kayak and canoe access, which is significantly different than motorboat access. And they also wanted fishing opportunities. And so those are really driving forces that are kind of educating us in our planning process as we kind of build out this park and whole park network. So again, kind of leaning on the folks that know, leaning on the resources we have available. We do a huge amount of archaeology work. We work very closely with our local tribes. We have 6 state-recognized tribes that we work with our tribal working group, as well as the recent integration of the Catawba Nation, which is actually a federally recognized tribe in South Carolina. So we have the tribes that interact with us and kind of help us design and plan these parks, to be very mindful of the history. This is actually a woman named Celia Daly, who is our hired botanist, and she's walked thousands of acres looking for rare and threatened and traditional medicinal plants. And so she works a lot with the tribes to help them find all the traditional plants that then long term we're going to provide access to them for traditional harvest for use. So really remarkable stuff there. And again, we do quite a bit of actually in-ground archaeology work. This is actually a group of students from Clemson University that came down, helped us do some kind of preliminary planning work for some of the properties. And these folks, this is the town staff for the town of Kingstree. This is Mayor Frank, who's the mayor of Andrews, South Carolina. This is some other administrative staff from the watershed. But we're getting all those folks out there. For too long, these communities have really been boxed out from the river. And even if they have, say, a boat ramp in downtown Andrews or a boat ramp in Kingstree, because there's been such limited access, folks have not really grown up in Kingstree, thinking about the Black River. But since we've undergone this process now, both the town of Kingstree and Andrews have done downtown either master plans or revitalization plans that are focusing now on the river. And so, case in point, the town of Kingstree, which is the top of the river, has branded themselves the crown of the Black River. And the town of Andrews, on the kind of the southern end, has named their town the jewel of the Black River. So they've both kind of turned from having their backs to the river to fully embracing the river for recreation, for economic opportunity. It's really been a fantastic kind of community driver so far. And so I said, at OSI, we do a lot of parks planning work. So this kind of demonstrates that. We are working on building out all those public amenities of roads and kayak launches and boardwalks and restrooms and pavilions and visitor centers, a whole slew of camping, whether it's paddling, platform camping like Okefenokee, if you've been down there, to tree houses like the Edisto River, to hiking camping, car camping, RV camping, the whole slew of camping opportunities across these different park units. This is just one particular launch we're working on right now, one trailhead, that again has kayak launching, a fishing platform, trails and boardwalks for exploring nature. So this is going to be underway this summer. So by fall, this is going to be open and available to the public, which will be the first of the Black River State Park. This is going to be the first publicly available facility. And this is its current condition, although there's been work here since. And so with that goes all sorts of on-the-ground work. A lot of what I do is really just consult management. So we're doing archaeology work, we're doing planning with partners, This is SCPRT staff right there. That's John Moon, who's the new Black River State Park manager. We tend to go work with Sealy. These are engineers and consultants checking out some future launch sites and doing wetland delineations and tree and topo surveys, all sorts of cool stuff. And so the other side of my job, besides doing parks, is also stewardship, which ties a lot into land use and habitat use. So we tend to buy, we're so successful with acquisition in South Carolina, and especially on the Black River, because we work a lot with timber companies. And so we're able to secure, 100,000 acres in South Carolina, mostly by buying timberlands. So if you think about International Paper, Resource Management Service, Weebus Vaco, the timber industry is kind of changing in the Southeast, and they're finding it advantageous to offload some of these huge tracts. So OSI will buy these tracts, RMS South that just showed 1,200 so acres, 800 acres. We're working on one for 4,900 acres right now in Florence County, but just huge tracts of land. And so with them comes active timber silviculture. So we do quite a bit of timber management. This is one of our state park properties that we're working on right now, where we come in and we essentially buy a mature stand of loblolly pine, planted loblollies in rows like you see, the ubiquitous loblolly farm. And so we'll come in, we will hire folks to do forestry management plans that are in line with OSI and PRT's long-term management. And then we will thin, as you see here, and actually put that revenue right back into the park, which is really quite nice. We can sell the timber off, and then use that funds to help build out the park. And so we'll also do quite a bit of controlled burning. This is down in Georgetown County, where we've done some burning and opened up this huge meadow, which unfortunately I don't have a picture of, but it's going to be absolutely beautiful as a longleaf savanna with underplantings of native wildflowers in the near future. And so what we're doing mostly with the pine is thinking about long-term conversion back to longleaf. And so we work quite a bit with TNC and the longleaf vines, trying to find ways to fund this restoration work. The avenue that we've taken is that if we buy property that has active longleaf silviculture, we're going to do kind of a slow roll towards longleaf. So what we're going to do is do thinning, do burning, and then underplant with longleaf. So as these mature trees slowly senesce over 30, 50, 70 years, we'll be underplanting with longleaf. And so it's a bit of a slower roll, but it's much more manageable and much more kind of fiscally responsible to kind of harvest the loblolly over time and slowly transition into the longleaf. But that's very exciting. That's going to be kind of more to come with the longleaf restoration. And so this is kind of what we're envisioning for the future. Like I said, the Black River State Park is going to be open initially this fall with some boat launches. Longer term, say in 5 years, we're building visitor centers, pavilions all across the river, cabins, tree houses, RV parks, all that kind of thing. With again, of course, a real focus on preserving those habitats for all of our native species. Ubiquitous bird photos. And the last kind of landscape is our forest ecosystems. And so just as an example, this is in the Cape Romaine, well here's the Cape Romaine National Wildlife Refuge. This is actually Princess Mary National Forest. We do a lot of expansion work. So we work a lot to expand Cape Romaine National Wildlife Refuge, to expand Princess Mary National Forest. And sometimes that means expanding the boundaries outwards, and sometimes that means coming in and picking up inholdings, which is what all these are. So we do quite a bit of kind of cleanup work on boundaries and expansions for our partners. And the way we do this is really, OSI is a land trust, which means you have a trust of money that you can deploy to acquire land. But like I said, we have a whole slew of attorneys And what really makes OSI special is we are very adept at finding public funding to lock up these properties. So we use grant money as much as possible, grants and donations, to buy these properties, and then we work with our end entity partner to help them acquire it through grants as well. So we work with PRT and DNR to help them get mostly federal funding to help buy the property from us. So we follow it all the way from cradle to grave, making sure it gets protected, then gets handed off to some long-term steward. And then just by the numbers, we've been in South Carolina about 10 years. We now are working in 4 states, 75 projects. I know these numbers are a little bit all over the place, but it's very dynamic. About 75 projects, 100,000 acres permanently protected and available for public access, with a local staff based either in Charleston or in North Carolina. And so that is all I had for you all today. Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
What drives your presence in those 4 states as opposed to other areas that you could work in?
So we historically are a New York-based organization. And so our senior chief of lands, Nate Barrett, who was an absolute scion, moved down to Charleston about 10 years ago to start the Southeast program. Because what they were seeing was in New York and New Jersey and Pennsylvania and Maine, where we've done it before, land is quite expensive. And so, we've seen with the East Basin project, there are still lots of conservation achievements and opportunities to be had in the Southeast. And so we came down here because we saw a niche that wasn't quite being filled, which was, again, acquiring land for public benefit. The East Basin has done a fantastic job of protecting land through conservation easements. Most of those are private easements. What we want to do is buy land for public benefit. Yes, ma'am.
Very impressive. I can really appreciate and understand how you're approaching it from both your short-term and mid-term, but I'm really questioning long-term, truly long-term. How are you assuring that stewardship and maintenance of what we have put into place really can survive 20, 25, 50?
Yeah.
Give me an example of how you're working with, and what kind of partners are you talking about?
So every partner that we have, to my knowledge, with very limited exceptions, are all public entities. And so it's all state ownership or federal ownership, all within an agency like DNR or state forests that are mission driven for conservation.
And you are comfortable that that will stay that way?
The state won't cross you up?
We have a fantastic partnership with those folks. I'm trying to think of what an alternative would be, as if they're selling off property.
Yeah, selling off property,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
As administrations change and priorities change, how are you assuring that they're not being sold off? Because you're making some really interesting economically developmental areas,
Yes.
Which is good, but it also is a place that a lot of the state may want to come in and do it in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. I am struggling to think of an example where the state has kind of offloaded conservation land.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't know.
You place easements on it before you give it.
We do not.
You don't?
No, we do not. Because we put them in the trust of the public. We kind of position ourselves as enabling those partners to achieve their mission. Yeah.
Can your lawyers lock it down?
I'm not a lawyer. But
Smart answer.
we do conservation easements in the Northeast. In other states we do. But in South Carolina, we do acquisition and disposition to public entities.
Being familiar with the Northeast, I appreciate the pressure that is on.
Absolutely.
use of that way.
I mean, historically, although this is my own interpretation, the states and the government tend to be the most conservative with their land. Other entities, and especially, my God, privately owned easements, that's like playing whack-a-mole with people trying to go outside of the intention of the conservation easement, for example.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't quite come up with a case study of where the state or federal partners aren't using their land, because we're getting their land for their purpose, not for our purposes.
Right.
We're just the intermediary. So they would have to change their mission to kind of run afoul of our goals. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
What properties they got 10 years ago or whatever that are now accessible now for us as a boarding group would we be interested in?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. Recently, I mean, most of this Fairlawn property now is part of Francis Mary National Forest. We've done some expansions of Cape Romaine along the ICW, probably not a great destination, but we did have a fantastic outcome. Let me go all the way back to the map. There we go. Right up here, as I mentioned, the confluence of the Ace Basin and Broad River up here. That is now DNR's property, managed as an expansion. I'm not sure if wholly managed as an expansion, but some of it managed as an expansion of the Gopher Tortoise Heritage Preserve. And so that's now publicly accessible. You can go, and it's the most northern extent of the Gopher Tortoise range. And so you can actually go out and find gopher tortoises, which is phenomenal. But that is now publicly open. Many of these places in the Midlands are opened up. We just closed with the county, so we sold it to the county just a few months ago. The Bradham Tract, which is an expansion of James Allen County Park. I believe they're working on opening that up. And then, very exciting is an expansion of the Wallover National Wildlife Refuge, which is up in Georgetown County. We preserved a small tract of a plantation up there with this incredible historic rice barn that apparently predates around the time of the Revolutionary War, and opens up quite a large expanse of the Wallover River. So those would be some that are already opened up.
We've been up to the Natural History Group has been up to the Yawkey
Oh yeah.
area. Do you have any projects that are close to that or
Yawkey?
tie into that?
Let's see. I think the closest would probably be all the expansion of the Weetee State Forest, which is most of this work right here on the Santee.
Yeah.
And then some work around Francis Mary on the Santee as well.
Any further questions? Nick, I've learned so much about how this whole process works.
Oh,
I really appreciate you coming out and letting us know. And clearly, it's preservation for the future. So, not for us, our children will definitely.
Yes.
And the birds will appreciate it. Yeah. So, thanks very much.
The Black River is really my bread and butter, and I will probably be retired before that's fully built out. So that's a long-term project.
That was great stuff.